just generally, they're jerks. Everybody knows they're jerks. Hi, I'm Sock Marionette, also known as Bargain Counter Argument, under which name I am available on Instagram as well as YouTube. I'm a middle-aged lady in a tiara talking about books. Now, this is part of my series, Is It Safe to Read, or Are These Safe to Read? So looking at these older historical romances from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, and asking, is this safe to read if you have a more modern sensibility? What are the attitudes toward consent in a relationship or outside of one? What are the attitudes about race and class and gender in general? So maybe it's something you're not sure whether or not you want to read. Maybe you're a little leery because, you know, these books sometimes justifiably have a reputation for having a pretty cavalier attitude toward SA. So maybe you want to know more, maybe you want to decide whether or not to read it, or maybe you just want to have some foreknowledge of what's going to happen in the book. There are going to be spoilers, because if you want to know what to watch out for and what might trip you up on reading this book, then, you know, I'm going to have to tell you what happens to a degree, you know. And yeah, so I'm not telling you whether or not you should enjoy it or whether or not you should read it. I'm just providing my perspective and some information that you can then use however you want. Maybe some of this stuff would be an enticement to you. Maybe you enjoy reading about problematic relationships. I do too. Sometimes it depends on the nature of the problems, I think. So today I'm going to be looking at 3 books I've read within the last couple of months, since the beginning of the year. And they're all step backs because that's how I roll. I always try to read at least one step back a week. Anyway, glasses are reflecting there. They're all 3 of these are step backs because I usually try to read a step back a week so that I can post on Instagram for Step Back Saturday. Again, bargain counter argument if you want to see some of that. Okay, so starting with the one I read least recently. These actually cover a variety of different time periods. The first one is Rexanne Becnal, The Mistress of Rosecliffe, which is a beautiful metallic burnt orange. And the strip on the side has like is that a Celtic knot? I don't know. It's really pretty. It's really pretty. And then the step back is pretty anachronistic in a way that the book itself isn't. Okay, now let me read the summary. He captured her legacy. Rogue Welsh knight Rhys ap Owain disguises himself as a wandering minstrel and arrives at Rosecliffe Castle to reclaim his birthright and take vengeance on his hated enemy. And Isolde Fitzhugh will be his pawn. With Isolde's father away, Rhys plans to seize Rosecliffe and his enemy's daughter, striking a mortal blow that is decades overdue. He has everything planned for his siege, and yet he is unprepared for the desire his beautiful hostage will ignite in him. Then he captured her heart. A stranger lit the fire buried deep within her, yet it is her dire enemy who reveals himself to Isolde in the throes of first passion. How she loathes him, Rhys ap Owain, the man who has brought her such aching pleasure. He used her innocence and desire to gain his stronghold in a plot to extract vengeance upon her family. Yet neither his revenge nor her hatred is a match for the unexpected passion that will force them to confront a destiny much greater than either could ever imagine. So yeah, he's seducing I think she's like 16 or 17. I mean, yes, they married young in those days, whatever. He's seducing her. I'm just distracted by the shiny. He is seducing her essentially fraudulently. He's pretending to be somebody he's not, and he's pretending that he has different interests than he does. And then he captures her. And there's a lot of talk about submission, how he's a wolf and he expects her to, I mean, he's not literally a wolf, he's not a shifter or anything, but he expects her to be submissive to him, and he wants her, she's an artist, so he wants her to paint a mural, fresco of his wolf dominating her family's crest or something like that. It's kind of uncomfortable. This book was published in, I want to say 2000, and I would be accurate in saying 2000. So this book was published in 2000, and it's just, for me, the discussion of this sort of my wolf will make your family surrender and submit and everything, it's not in a way that I found particularly sexy, and it just missed the mark for me. And like I said, he does seduce her fraudulently. Seduce, I mean, that's SA by fraud. So, yeah. And as far as the story, the characters, the writing, I don't think it's worth the risk. Your mileage, of course, may vary. Maybe this is exactly what you want from a book. It's pretty. Maybe you want to decorate with it. Okay. The other one I read after that, sometime after that, not immediately after that, is Cold Night, Warm Stranger by Jill Gregory. I believe this was 1999. Let's see. This is, let me see, 1999, yes. 2 for 2. Oh, and yes, this is, as I said, a step back. So we've got, they're having a moment. They're having a good time, which reflects what happened in the book. They had a good time. A Shivering Cold Angel. Maura Reed was all alone in her Montana hotel, curled up in her robe and slippers when the blizzard hit. It was cold, quiet, and lonely until a ragged gunslinger blew in from the storm demanding shelter. Just for this night, this wild stormy night, Maura wanted something. Just for this night, this wild stormy night, Maura wanted something. Recklessly, she abandoned herself in his arms, knowing he would be gone by morning. The last thing she ever expected was the need that drove her into the wilderness, to find the stranger who haunted her dreams. A hot, dangerous devil. He was the fastest gun in the West, a man who feared nothing until he met the woman who touched his heart. Quinn Lassiter didn't even recognize Maura when she cornered him in a distant saloon months later. Never in his wildest dreams did he see himself married until he said the words that made her his wife. He was determined to do the right thing by the woman he'd wronged, but he'd never reckoned on falling in love with her. Cold Night, Warm Stranger. Yeah, I mean, you can probably guess from the summary that she is completely astonished to discover that after their night of passion, she's pregnant. She's going to have a baby. She's in the family way. There's going to be a little stranger. What it doesn't talk about is that in this hotel, she's a drudge. It's her family's hotel, but her father's dead, and I think so is her stepmother. So she's got these stepbrothers, half-brothers. I don't quite remember what their relationship is, but they are exploiting her labor, and they're up to no good. Just generally, they're jerks. Everybody knows they're jerks, and she's not too upset to have to strike out on her own once she talks to Quinn. And this is one of those stories. It's a Western romance, clearly. And I enjoyed it. I would say the roughest bits are how her brothers treat her. And there is violence. I would say that actually, I haven't read a whole lot of Westerns, like pure Westerns, Louis L'Amour and those kinds of books. I have seen some movies, I've seen some TV shows, and I have read a couple of Westerns, but not a whole lot. And I would say that the plot of this, like, there's more to it than this, the summary on the back. There's a gunfight, and there's violence, and there's a threatened small town and everything. And the plot is very much like any Western. It's just that there is more emphasis on personal relationships and romance. I mean, you would see that in a Western where, the guy, ends up settling down or doesn't. Except that this is an historical romance, so he's going to end up settling down. And I really had a good time reading this. Again, there's violence. Her brothers are just terrible people, but she knows it. He knows it. The townspeople know it. Everybody knows it. So it's not like they're glamorizing behavior, but there is, there's a siege and there's, again, violence and stuff. I really had a good time with it. And I would say, I don't think, there's going to be stuff that trips people up, especially when it comes to violence, but I would say for me, it was definitely worth it. And the relationship he has with her, this overnight, like, forced proximity, alone in the storm thing, it's very of the moment, and they're both into it. She actually decides she wants to have this relationship because she wants something for herself. She wants something. And so it's very sweet. And I mean, for a one night stand, yeah. And I think that also you do have some, like, dudes behaving like dudes, like being overly protective in some ways and underprotective in others. There is a young couple that is courting, and okay. I just suddenly, thinking about it, I remembered. This young couple that's courting, she is assaulted by the bad guys, and the guy who has a crush on her is very conflicted. He doesn't know how to think about that. And the elders set him straight. And I'm like, come on, dude, don't be weird. So, if you don't want to read about that, like I said, it ends up being happy for them. Okay. Liked it. And like I said, I think for me, it was worth it. And I said, it wasn't too yikes, as I would term it. Okay, finally, the one I've read most recently of these three is Tender Betrayal by Rosanne Bittner. This is a step back as well. Like I said, they all are at this point. And yeah, there's a lot going on there. Beloved Enemies. Beautiful, proud Audra Brennan felt like a stranger in a foreign land when she came north from Louisiana to study music the summer she was 17. But when she savored her first forbidden taste of desire in the arms of handsome lawyer Lee Jeffries, his caresses sparked a flame within her that burned away the differences between rebel and Yankee. All objections silenced by the fierce beating of two wild hearts falling impetuously, impossibly in love. Stolen kisses and secret rendezvous. Suddenly cannon fire shattered the country and their newfound joy in each other. Principled, impassioned, and committed to a nation united, Lee answered the call to fight against the Confederacy, while Audra hurried home to a plantation shadowed by the darkening cloud of war. All through the violent days and hellish nights, Lee never forgot the spirited beauty who'd captured his heart. And as Audra endured the heartache and loss that would transform a pampered young belle into a woman of courage, she dreamed of a new life in an untamed land. But could she surrender her rebel's heart to the only man who'd ever possess her soul? Now, this was published in 96? 93. Ooh, not quite. Didn't quite get that one. And I started reading this. I was like, ooh, Civil War. This is potential. This has high yikes potential. And I started reading it, and I was kind of intrigued because it does, the parts that take place in the North take place in Connecticut, which is where I live, and actually it's in a place called Mulberry Point, which is in Guilford, which is very close to where I live, on the shore of Long Island Sound. And I started reading it, and I was kind of thinking it was going to be a quick DNF, that I was going to read it, and it was going to have this view of the Civil War that was just going to be intolerable to my sensibilities as both a 21st century person and as an historian. However, I actually got drawn into it, and it presented the subject with a lot more nuance than I expected. He's not just committed to the Union cause, he is an abolitionist. And if you know anything about the Civil War in the North, not everybody in the North was abolitionists. Some were anti-slavery, usually for economic reasons rather than moral reasons. He is an abolitionist for moral reasons, and a lot of people in the North didn't care one way or the other. So anyway, but he's an abolitionist for moral reasons, and they get into it. And I think Rosanne Bittner does a good job of reminding you that she is a sheltered 17-year-old who has barely been outside the plantation, and she has been taught all kinds of things about slavery and the Union and so on that she's not able to let go of. And so it was, like I said, it was much more nuanced than I expected it to be, much more interesting as a result. And I did read it to the end, and I rather enjoyed it, actually, and I was pleasantly surprised. Now, there is an author's note, which I'm going to read in its entirety. Historical events in this novel set during the Civil War are true, and certain officers placed in particular battles are real. However, the primary characters and their personal stories are fiction. It is my hope that readers will understand that many of the opinions expressed in this novel about slavery and racial prejudice are not my own. I have strived to show the beauty, intelligence, and strength of Black Americans while at the same time realistically portraying the situation as it was in our country just before, during, and after the Civil War. Tender Betrayal is a story of abiding love. It is also a story of hope and of people, both black and white, determined to survive and to rise above disaster through faith not only in God, but in the human spirit. I don't always agree with how she handles the topic or what her characters are saying. Again, they are products of their time, and I think maybe she gives a little too much credence to the arguments that the South were making, but she does not fall into the trap of saying, well, it's just all about states' rights, or it's just about economics. She does present the moral argument against slavery, and she kind of, Rosanne Bittner, I mean, makes it clear that there is no answering moral argument that is pro-slavery. She's like, no, just no. And so, like I said, it was more nuanced and therefore more interesting and engaging than I thought it would be. So that was good. However, I will say, and of course there is racism and violence because the Civil War is a fair amount of use of the N-word because of people used it. There's also a discussion of people who own other people embarking on romantic relationships with people who were incapable of giving informed consent because of the very circumstances of their lives. And the female main character, Audra, after she and Lee are separated, she ends up marrying this dude that she's been engaged to for a long time. He's a lot older than she is. And he turns out to be an absolute abusive piece of work. And some of this essay, physical abuse, you know, it's terrible and it is not glamorized in any way. However, it is very rough to read about. So if you do not want to read about essay, especially since, you know, she goes out of her way not to glamorize it, not to suggest that it's okay, but it is rough reading. So that is potentially something that could cause distress to a lot of people. So again, do with that information what you will, and I hope you use it in good health. And yeah, this is my second video addressing is it safe to read? How yikes are these books? And again, the quick summary is proceed with caution. For some people, it will be worth it. For others, probably not. There are some things that are kind of yikes, but it's, you know, again, for some people it'll be worth it, for others it won't. It's not the violence, essay or other kinds of violence in this one are not as graphically depicted as in this one. Yeah, so, and then this one, the sexual politics are not great. Not for 1993 and not for, I mean, even by the standards of, when is this was supposed to take place? 1153. It's weird because it's like this weird mix of like, it's historical, so everybody was very brutal back then, and also kind of modern sensibilities. It's very jarring to read. I did finish it, but it wasn't very long, so I didn't have to live with the discomfort for too long. Okay, so thank you as always for your attention. I hope you found this video helpful in some way, and you can like, comment, share, subscribe, or don't. I am not the boss of you, and I hope you have a good day or night.